Good evening. This is Geeks Assembled Audio Heads, and tonight we have a very special guest. This is Phil Rose of Robin of Sherwood fame. He played Friar Tuck, and he is amazing. And we are honored and privileged to have him here. And so, because we're all new to each other, we will go around and introduce ourselves to Phil and to each other. Oh, and there's Carol Ballard. She's amazing as well. She's put this together for us. So let's begin with a quick go around and an introduction, or like say hello to each other and stuff. Please begin, Lee.
Hello, I'm Lee. I'm sort of the head man of the geeks, but we all gather together and we like to talk about anything entertainment-wise, be it audio, be it films, be it movie, we just love it. So that's me. I'm in Hull, of course. I'm a real Yorkshireman. But we'll get onto that a little bit later. That's me, Susan.
Thank you. Beef Dad, how about yourself?
Good evening. Jeffrey Keep, known as Beef Dad. Because my son's nickname was Beefhead. So we decided when I started doing casts with my son that I would be called Beef Dad. I also am a massive Doctor Who fan, right from the first ever episode. And of course, being quite ancient now, I cosplay the first Doctor because I've actually got white hair. I don't need to buy a wig.
Thanks. Here you are.
Okay, well, I'm Alex. We're about 30 minutes away from Boston, Massachusetts, on the northeast coast. And we, of course, have a lot of English-sounding names, but not to be confused. And I am a British cult TV fan. I also have my own group, and we're working on other groups as well. We work with Geeks Assembled. We work with the Jodie Whittaker page for the new season and era of Doctor Who. There you go.
Thanks. And I am Susan, and I love audio adventures, and I love learning about. I love interacting with wonderful stars and talented individuals from the UK, and so I'm honored here to introduce you to Phil Rose. Please, Phil, go ahead and say hello.
Hello. How are you? It's lovely to be here, Susan. And can I say straight away that me and Beef Daddy have one thing in common. We both saw the very first episode of Doctor Who all those years ago. You young people didn't, but we did.
Yeah.
It's true.
Okay.
I'm
older than you, Phil.
Yep. Now, Mr. Rose, weren't you also in EastEnders, which is also a long-running show? And there was a medical drama soap called The Doctors, which a lot of the actors from Doctor Who have been in, from the early 2000s? Or am I mistaken? Were you in that show? I believe you were, weren't you? As well as Robin Hood, you were in The Doctors, which was the medical drama soap?
I did an episode of The Doctors, which was set in Birmingham, and also did an episode of EastEnders. And it was about the third time that Ricky had come back looking for his father. So we've dipped in and out of these shows, obviously, but still love the Scarifyers and still love Robin and Sherwood.
Yeah. But my other point is too that they're also long-running shows. I mean, not as wonderful as the old classics, but they're still running. EastEnders is still running. I don't know if the medical drama.
The Doctors is actually still running, and as you say, long-established shows, but none like the great ones. But
Right.
these long-established shows, as long as they entertain and keep the fans interested, they have a longevity of their own, don't they?
Right, and you're also, one of the reasons why we're here is because you're doing a lot of audio plays, correct?
Well, we're trying to do a lot more of the Robin of Sherwood audio play.
Right, which you just mentioned, yeah.
Both singly, where one person tells a story, and I've done one of those, or the original the cast members from 34 years ago. So even at the age of 66, I could run around the forest on an audio. It's a boy's adventure.
Well, yes, actually, I was on a radio show on a radio station in the 80s because they were playing Sherlock Holmes. They were playing a lot of the 1940s, 1950s American.
Oh, the Basil Rathbone?
Right. They were playing a lot of, they were playing Suspense and X-1, and
yes,
they're actually playing it for about 2 or 3 hours every weeknight.
Oh, good.
So they had to do it with commercials, but they tried to keep the openings and the music and all that.
Yeah.
So I learned at a very early age that is another way to help your imagination. You don't have to stay with just TV and movies. You can read books, you can listen to audio plays, you can watch TV,
Exactly. But with audio...
Yeah, and sometimes the audio plays are better because you have to use more imagination.
Well, they have to be...
Yeah, go ahead, Phil.
More imagination in the fact that if you're only hearing it instead of seeing it as well, you can conjure up some great pictures in your brain that each individual listener does, and that's how it goes to become quite famous.
So we're here today talking a lot about the Scarifyers.
Oh yes.
And the one adventure that we'd like to really focus on today is the Secret Weapon of Doom Parts 1 and 2.
Shall I tell you how I originally got the part of Bunny Cheesewright?
Yes, please.
The previous one I did was called The Devil of Denge Marsh. I believe you've discussed it before. And what happened was, a very good friend of mine rang me to say, we're having a rehearsal for a thing called the Scarifyers, The Devil of Denge Marsh, and they've asked him to do a northern accent. And he said, I can't do a northern accent. He said to Simon, the producer, but I know somebody who can, and that's Phil Rose. And Simon, the producer, said, Phil Rose, not Friar Tuck from Robin of Sherwood. And he said, yes. He said, come into the living room. And he had all the DVDs and the videos of it. I got to meet Simon, who obviously him and Mr. Morris, the writer, liked my adaptation. And we did it. And that's how I got into the Scarifyers.
Yes, and you play Bunny Cheesewright.
I do. A very funny name, I think, Bunny Cheesewright. You'd never forget that in a hurry, would you?
So if I may ask, how long is it before you actually get into the studio? And I know that even on YouTube they've shown, even though this is slightly different, even though it's still acting, they have shown videos of other media where they're acting in a cartoon movie or they're acting in a animated, like DuckTales. As we know, the new version of DuckTales has David Tennant as Scrooge McDuck.
Yes.
And sometimes when you interview the people, even on YouTube, sometimes they have the whole script and other times they don't. And other times they're watching their scenes on the screen, whatever screen they're using, and they have to read for that. Sometimes they're with two actors, sometimes just themselves, and then it gets spliced together in the engineering.
Yes, well, what usually happens with the Scarifyers is they would send me the complete script about a month or 5 weeks beforehand. Then on the day that we record, I think what Simon, the producer, wants is to get as many of the cast members together on the day to do the scenes, because you get a better atmosphere if you're playing against each other and it's not just you or one-to-one. So then what they do is, when I read the Secret Weapon of Doom, I suddenly realised Bunny Cheesewright is dead.
Yes.
And I went, oh no, I can't have this. But then later on, I say to Dunning, I can't be dead because you told me I'm not dead. So I thought I was going to die, but thankfully they didn't kill me off.
I know. Okay, so let's begin. Our format usually is that we go around and we say our opening thoughts about this. So could I have Beef Dad's opening thoughts on the Secret Weapon of Doom, please?
Yeah, I love this. Loosely based on Pandora's Box. Excellently written. I really enjoyed it. It made me laugh so much. There are so many puns and whimsicals in it, well, the performances are brilliant, all of them. Phil, I loved your bunny cheese, right? I thought that was brilliant. I loved Nigel Hayworth's Victor Bright, but Leslie Phillips doing Colonel Black. What a loony. Absolutely brilliant. And of course, Nicholas Courtney and Telly Malloy, the dynamic duo of the Scarifyers, they were just superb. I also, there weren't very many female characters in this. In fact, there seems to, I think it was 3. And they were all played by the same person, Lizzie Roper. And I loved her doing Primula Manningtree. She was just so good. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I mean, what did we have? We had goblins, we had a giant ape, robots, and of course, right at the end, the dog.
The biggest dog in the world.
That really made me laugh. That really did make me laugh. And the whole business about when the giant ape grabs Mrs. Manningtree and takes her up to the top of the
Fire.
And yeah, the whole business of King Kong and how the monkey likes her. That was just so funny. That was just so funny and so cleverly done. And that's my opening.
Thanks. And Lee, how about yourself?
Well, as I said earlier, Scarifyers, this is the 5th one we've listened to, and I think it's the 5th one, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. Nope.
Maybe freezing.
It seems to get better and funnier. And can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Yeah. Say as the Scarifyers go along, they get funnier and funnier. And so this is the 5th one we've listened to, and this is the first double one, 2-parter sort of thing. Yeah, it is a fun ride, and as Beef Dad said, the acting in this is brilliant. The characterizations are brilliant. I'm a bit dubious about Bunny Cheesewright always wanting to go down to the pub, but these Yorkshiremen were not always drinking, And but yeah, I do like the portrayal of Bunny. He can be rude. it can be obnoxious, but he's straightforward, and that's what Yorkshiremen are known for, being straight talking. But yeah, it's fun. It's a fun tale. It's a shame. I mean, it's Nicholas Courtney's last Scarifyers before he sadly passed away. But you can't knock Nicholas Courtney. He just goes in there full pelt as Lionheart and done in brilliant team together with Terry Malloy. Brilliant. I enjoyed this, and as I say, I can't wait to listen to more as we go along and stuff like that. But if this is anything to go by, I'm just gonna carry on listening to these until I don't think we've got any more due coming out now.
Yes, we have another one coming out.
Oh,
that's out.
Oh, have you? Is it out? Which one?
It's called The Gnomes of Death.
Of Death. Yes. Ooh.
Ooh.
What a title.
What a title.
Yeah.
And you're in that, right?
Yes, I am in that.
Brilliant. All right. Well, okay. Would you like to give an opening thought about?
Well, as I said, I wanted to also know, a little bit more about the technical. Is there also rehearsals, or is it just you read, or is there a signal that you get from the producer or the engineer if they want a break, or is it just you sort of rehearse maybe twice and then just read it through? And people forget too sometimes. You have to read it through. You can't always just always act perfectly on the first try and get everything. It's great if you can, but you can't always do that. And if you're all together, is that anywhere from 1 to 12 people in the room, or is it like a radio show where you have the script and you just talk into a big microphone, or do you have headphones on? Because I've seen so many different examples that I'm not really sure how it's done anymore.
Well, it's interesting because originally, as I say, you get the script about 4 or 5 weeks before you actually go. And Paul, who writes it, and Simon, who produces it, are very, very clever in getting a good storyline together, and as many people on the day as they can get in. So we're actually working, there could be 8 actors in there, and what they do, they usually put you in a single booth on your own, and you're only connected with your earphones to what the other person is saying. And I think when it's like that, we know it's being recorded, but it's so live, you can bounce off people. They may have one rehearsal. They might just say, let's go for it and see what happens, because usually the first take is the best because it's hot and it's fresh and you know it. The advantages we have on the audios is that we read it, but we are very, very familiar with it before we even go to the studio. So it's not like a cold reading.
Yeah. Well, again, as I said, I was in one radio actually broadcasting, and unfortunately I didn't have enough experience, so I came in a little too high-pitched sometimes and low-pitched other times because the engineer and the sound person didn't say, try it this way, try it that way. And then I learned that night, too, I had to read commercials. And it's not as easy as it seems. Plus, they had a punctuation that wasn't actually spelled out, so it was very rough.
Right.
But as I got older, I realized how it's supposed to flow, so it sounds just like you're speaking like you are now.
Well, what's interesting is this is the genius of Paul and Simon, in that if they use the same characters over and over again, you actually get to know how somebody will react to you in a certain position. Yeah. I mean, I'll give you an example. In 1995, I went to Chicago to a Blake 7 Doctor Who Red Dwarf Robin Assured convention, and on the plane was my very good friend, the Brigadier, Mr. Courtney. This was Lionheart. He was on his second marriage, actually. And from that day we gelled, And actually, I was the very first person to call him Cairo Courtney.
Nice. Awesome. That's brilliant.
The reason I called him Cairo Courtney was, number one, he was born in Cairo. But number two, every job I ever went for, and I'm from the north of England, he would be there playing a northerner. And I said, you're not a northerner. He said, I'm a northerner. I said, you're northern Cairo. You're not northern England. And we had a good laugh about that. And then interestingly enough, we grew to be great friends, and a great sad loss when he passed away. But then, now that Terry Malloy is in there still, who is obviously Davros from Doctor Who, so we cross-dress again.
Yes.
And Terry has also now done one of the Robin of Sherwood audios.
Oh, awesome.
So the Knights of the Apocalypse. And interestingly enough, when I read the script of Colonel Black, who's obviously quite mad, because you know at the very first scene, he's trying to shoot a wasp in his office. With a gun. And he's going, where are you? And you hear the wasp. And Lionheart comes in and said, just a minute, and opens the window. But then when Dunning comes in, he's trying to get rid of Dunning because obviously he wants to manipulate, actually, Lionheart. And then, of course, when Mr. Bright comes in, he's the brighter one that takes over in the end. And very, very clever, right at the end, to have the biggest dog in the world called Digby, wasn't it? And actually what was so funny is when Mr. Jasper Plato Bouverie dies, that's how Dunning becomes the president of the Fantasists.
Yes, right.
Right? The Fantasist group. And then
the ones who were writing the book that was causing all this mayhem.
Because I say, what we're doing with Mr. Bouverie's remains and ashes. And Dunning says, well, he's left us something like £360,000 in his will. That's why some of the time we're walking around with his urn underneath our arms with his ashes in.
Right, and that they thought that was the Pandora's box, right?
Exactly. But then when I get attacked by a plutonium war machine, you think that I've been killed. But thankfully, Paul and Simon resurrected me from the grave to be here tonight, to be Bunny Cheesewright.
So fun. Well, I personally am. Nicholas Courtney is my heartthrob. I run his Facebook fan page and his Brigadier group and his Remembrance little group, and I just love him. I love him so much, and I became a fan of his 3 months after his passing. So my timing is rubbish, but I was really, I'm a really lifelong fan of his.
Well, actually then what's interesting is you say you became a fan 3 months after he died. Thank goodness we have the technology of the recordings of the Scarifyers, so you can relive and relive it anytime you want.
I know, and this is really, it's really tremendous. It's really amazing to hear the story of how he gained the name Cairo Courtney, because, I mean, he writes about that to a certain point in his book? Autobiographies, yes.
Well, we used to go on a Saturday evening where Nick lived. We used to go with a few friends to the pub to have a drink, or the bar, as you would say.
Yes,
and over the course of all the time that we were going there, you know, he loved the name Cairo Courtney. We actually did another lovely one for Blake 7. You know Blake 7?
Yes.
Well, in Blake 7, Paul Darrow
Avon
played a bit of a baddie. Well, we used to always call him Lord Darrow.
Oh my.
Avon. Well, we used to call him Lord Darrow. So Cairo Courtney would say to me, "Oh, I've had a phone call from Lord Darrow, from Lord Darrow about this, and this," and we'd have a laugh. And then one day when we met him, we said, "Oh, Cairo Courtney sends his best," and he said, "Who the bloody hell's that?" I said, "It's Nick Courtney." He went, "Oh yes, lovely man, lovely man." So these little times when we come together and we do it. And interestingly enough, when Nick died, of course, we all thought, well, that might be the end. But of course now we've got the lovely Mr. Warner coming.
Yeah, David Warner.
He's a very strong professional. Yes, a very strong professional actor who actually carries it off extremely well.
Yes, I agree. I concur. But I've jumped ahead in my listening, so I'm into his section.
Oh, right, that's lovely then.
So
Interestingly enough, I did actually say to Leslie Phillips,
yes,
I said, Leslie, and he was in his 80s then, I said, can you tell me, when did you sort of first, you know, the hello, how are you, ladies? And he said it came quite naturally, he said, and that was the persona that he had. So when we found out that he was Colonel Black and he was playing a complete nutcase who wanted to shoot a wasp in his office, you can see behind the thinking that Paul and Simon, the writer and producer, are going, we'll turn this round so he's not playing a lovey-lovey, he's playing a maniac. And then, of course, Mr. Bright comes in, who's very calm and cool and collected, and sorts it all out.
that's awesome. Do you have any favorite parts? Let's start with Beef Dad. Any favorite parts?
Well, yeah, there's more than one, but the accident at the beginning with Dunning and the bath chair. To be perfectly honest, I was just sitting there crying with laughter because I'd been on a holiday many years ago when I was young, and we were in a hotel in Jersey, and somebody was being brought down the stairs in a bath chair, and they lost control of it, and the bath chair came down with the guy in it, and it hit one of my friends. And yeah, at the time, yeah, I couldn't stop laughing because it was just so funny. You do not expect to be hit by a bath chair. I mean, nobody was badly hurt. It was just so funny. But yeah, that amused me. Yeah, Phil's confusion. I thought I was dead. No, you're not dead. that made me laugh. And right at the very end, where the spirit supposedly Jasper Playdale Bouverie, but he's now a Greek god, demigod, where he's offering the Pandora's box to whoever wants it, and he offers it to, and Leslie Phillips says he wants it, and says all the things that he's going to do with it, which are massively destructive and completely mental. And I never got to hear. You never get to hear what he was planning on doing to Wales, which disappointed me. I would like to have known that. And as I said, Lizzie Roper playing Primula when she was up the top of the tower with the monkey, and was it Dunning with her? And he goes through a handbag, pulls out a banana, and basically confuses the monkey. It was just so funny. It was just so funny, so clever, and so well done. That's
All right. All right, Lee, what are your favorite bits?
Well, there's so many. The attack of the Blue Ridge Brigade. That's very funny. Every time Dunning discovers a body, he gets accused of murder. I mean, that was so funny. And Leslie Phillips guiding Nicholas Courtney into a cupboard. It's a secret elevator, a passage door to, it's a cupboard. But yeah, there's so many things in it. It's just wonderfully written. And the act, it comes across like everybody's enjoying themselves. They're having a good time recording it, and I know Phil is these days is a theatre actor these days. I know that. But do you find? This is to Phil. Do you find that voice acting is more easier or harder than being on the stage or in front of the camera? Because you've only having to use your voice.
Well, I think that it's an interesting question, because on the stage or in front of the camera, you can use your face, your body, and your voice. Now, when you're doing it as an audio, you are painting a picture for somebody who's going to listen to it, and that picture's got to be 100% more than accurate. Because if I do a radio show or an audio and 10 people listen to it, in their own mind, 10 different people draw different conclusions. That nobody ever thinks the same thing. It's all coming to the same end. Like, for example, when Paul very cleverly writes at the fact, and after all this, after the the plutonium war people had attacked me, after everybody was dead, and the giant monkey and the banana, and you'll never guess what happened next. It was Digby, the biggest dog in the world, and we all go, ah. And what we've got satisfaction because we know how it's ended. We've got pleasure because we know nobody else got killed. And the other thing is that Mr. Black was well and truly deserves it and got his chips, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
When he got killed.
Yes, he did. Do you have a favorite moment, Alex?
Well, I appreciate the cast. I wasn't that much of a fan of the story. Plus, I don't remember if I heard the very first story of it. But as you know, I have seen Mr. Rose and Robin Hood, and that was great. Again, I have a little experience with voice. I know Beef Dad, and of course, Mr. Rose has much more experience. But yeah, now that you mention it, yeah, I remember singing and I remember doing narration. And some people were like, oh, that was wonderful. And other people were like, oh, my God, that was so different from your regular voice and all that. And sometimes I can do it with exact precision, and sometimes I can't because I don't have that much experience. It's actually easier in a way to sing. But the funny thing is, I sang in public, so some people were, loving it and almost hugging me, and other people were like, oh, I don't like it at all. So it is pretty funny sometimes that, when you do a performance, whether it's singing, acting, or narration, it's funny how, especially if you do it in front of an audience, it's very funny sometimes the reaction you'll get. And sometimes it's a wonderful reaction, and sometimes it isn't.
What is interesting then when you do an audio, for example, Carol Ballard is my sternest critic, and will say, I listened to that and that didn't sound funny, or it didn't. I'd say, well, taken in context, it will do because you're listening to the whole piece. So if she looks at a script and goes, well, your bit's this and whatever, I'll say on the day, the magic comes together. And as you say, sir, about singing or about voiceovers, you can do a voice and somebody will go, oh, that sounds a bit weird, but that'll be brilliant for a baddie in a cartoon, so you could get the job. And then other people would go, well, I can't see Leslie Phillips being a baddie, but when he was, how brilliant was it, because nobody expected it. But a man who walks around with a gun trying to shoot a fly has definitely got one that flew over the cuckoo's nest, hasn't he?
All right. I have to tell you, I really appreciate how much, how many different like layers of creative thought went into these. These are Alex repeatedly last night and this morning when we were re-listening was saying, this is such a bunch of nonsense. Look at this and this and this and this. And I was like, yes, I know, it's hilarious.
It's actually quite interesting, Susan, that it's interesting and hilarious.
Yes.
And what Paul and Simon, the writer and the producer, have done is set a thing called the fantasists, the Scarifyers, in about the 1930s or a bit later, where there's no mobile phones, there's no faxes, there's no instant gratification, press a button and I'm around the other side of the world. It's a lot of footwork, a lot of brain work, a lot of slogging. And interestingly enough, it's their thought process behind it that goes, that's very clever how you got that. But as the fantasists who were writing different stories and being attacked by Pandora's box, that was also clever because you never knew right to the end who exactly was the baddie. And we know now Mr. Black got it because he wanted it.
Right.
Well, again, when I say nonsense, of course, it's whimsy.
Yeah, right.
And there's also,
Exactly.
it's also, you know, even though I know this doesn't immediately correlate, in a lot of the old radio shows, especially the 1940s, they had running gags. Like when you listen to the show Fibber, McGee, and Molly, and they usually tried to work in a part where they open up a closet, and all this, you know, noise comes in, like somebody dropped 100 pans, or
Yes.
yeah,
Because
like,
what they would, because what they would,
the old joke where you open the closet and 10,000 things come out, you know, like an avalanche. It just comes pouring down. Yeah.
because then what's interesting is the people that wrote those shows in the 40s knew that in every episode you would somehow get to opening a cupboard where a lot of things fell out, and it had to be different every time, but you knew it was coming. And even when it happened, you still laughed because it was funny. And that's the whole point of being on your toes. And then the other dramatic side of it is, of course, Orson Welles' War of the Worlds, when people actually thought the Martians had landed. You can't get any more real than that, can you? You know, because the Martians landing is a lot more severe than opening a cupboard and all the books fall out, isn't it?
Yeah, and this Scarifyers rides sort of a rail between the two. I mean, there is a bunch of funny like jokes, but then there's some things that are properly eerie about it.
Exactly. Also, what they do, Susan, sometimes they do say you have to be a little bit mad to write something like this, don't you? So I'm not saying that Paul the writer and Simon the producer are a bit mad, but my God, it's worked well for them, and please may it work well, and we see old Bunny Cheese, right, coming back again.
Yeah. And do you fellas have some other questions for Phil, or anything else you guys want to talk to him about?
I take it that's a no.
No, they just give them a sec. They take a long time to think.
Well, they're from Yorkshire, you see. They're from Yorkshire.
I'm not from Yorkshire, I'm from London.
Wow. From Massachusetts, anyway.
Yeah, I must confess, the one thing that I haven't done is voice overs. I've never done a voiceover. I've never done a sort of, I narrated a show once, but it's not this. I'd actually written the damn thing, so it was different. Yeah, I would imagine that you have to use your imagination a hell of a lot to do an audio, and to actually put the feelings across purely with your voice. Yeah, that I always find very, very impressive. Certainly with the Big Finish audios.
You're right there, Beef Daddy.
Hmm?
Because the thing is, you have to be very creative, but it's
Yeah.
always nice if it's already been written creatively for you to act upon.
Yeah, yeah.
Which
Yes.
makes the final choice very, very clear, and the final result, you think, that is absolutely genius, because it's a team effort.
Yeah, absolutely. But the thing is, it can be brilliantly written, but you have to have good actors.
Exactly, exactly.
You have to have good actors to do it, and that's probably why you're such a success in it.
Thank you.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Believe me, it's a great pleasure.
Thank you, and a pleasure to meet you as well.
I've got a question.
Aye, go on.
Oh God.
Aye, but it's nothing to do with the audio. It's going back 34 years.
Oh, aye.
And you've mostly been asked this loads and loads of times. But at the end of when it all came to an end, did you know that was going to be the last series? Robin of Sheffield.
Yes. Well, they didn't immediately come out and say, this is the last 2 episodes called The Time of the Wolf with Jason Connery. But what they did say was, you know, it's looking like there might not be any more. And in hindsight, you must remember that when Michael Praed left us and Jason took over, and I've always been asked the question, how did I take that on the personal level of the 2 Robins? I always give the same answer, and the same answer is I go to the bank every day for 30 years and I see the bank manager. One day I go in and the bank manager's changed. Simple as that. So when it really came to an end, I was very, not tearful, it was a bit, it'd been 3 years of my life, 26 hours, but what is brilliant about it is that I always think now, looking back, for whatever reason, we finished it. We finished on a high. We finished on probably, at the time, the best show in the mid-80s on British television. Mm-hmm. And also, I would rather have 26 hours that we can talk about now rather than well, Phil, episode 999 of Rocky, what do you think? You know? Because people would do that, because people would laugh and go, oh, not again. And that is interesting, because now when we do the audios, and I'm 66 now, I can run around the studio and be a boy of 23 or a friar of 31. It's a boy's adventure. If I started to do it in the forest now, I'll probably break my hip the first week. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well,
and if you keep them laughing while you're doing it, it's even better.
Well, I just asked that question because when you get to the end of season 3 of Robin of Sherwood, and it comes to the last episode and the credits roll, it made me want more. You know, it worked. You wanted more, but well, that was it. That was the end of it.
What did one of the great American writers put? Leave them wanting more. Because then you've got them always. Because if you'd have finished that 300th episode of Robin of Sherwood and gone, oh God, I can't take any more of this, because you can only capture and kill Robin Hood once, and why is Gisborne so stupid in every episode he lets Robin go, and why is Friar Tuck being stupid, and why is this happening? So, as you say, you wanted more, but now you can have more with the audios that Barnaby Eaton-Jones is doing and bringing new life into it from old actors that are still around. Yeah.
And I've got to say, in my opinion, Nicholas, is the
I
best
would
show
agree.
for
I would agree.
ever.
Because also, people will say to me, what do you think of the other Robins, the Kevin Costner, the Patrick Bergen ones? For their time, they were of their time. We had the mid-80s spot. That's what we did. And we hoped and we pray and we did give you the best we could give you. And that's why it's always nice to be related to Robin and Sherwood, the Scarifyers, or any of the work I've done.
Well, again, that's the other issue too, because even some of the people in Doctor Who and Blake 7 have said that, you know, there was a downside to being on TV, the long hours and sometimes sometimes things didn't go smooth or you had terrible props. And you don't necessarily have to deal with that with the audio. Yes, you're using your voice as an instrument, and hopefully it doesn't get tired. Or I know sometimes when I was singing, my voice would get tired or it would get, scratchy or whatever. But I would eventually learn, how much I could do and what I needed to, help along and things like that. I'm sorry.
I will tell you something now. I have a great regret in life, and that is that I never did a Doctor Who. Because actually watching the first episode when I was 14, and then the following week watching the episodes 1 and 2 together, and following it for a long, 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 long time. Of course, now we have a new lady Doctor Who, I'd love to be in it. But if the powers that be say yes, that's fine. If not, it's still a great show. And sometimes you can't be in everything. But I'm very grateful for the things I have been in. And if they give you and the lovely fans, who are the most important people in the world, the pleasure, I'm very grateful.
I'm sure Big Finish Audio will be in touch very soon.
Well, Big Finish Audio, you have my number. If not, ring Carol. She'll sort me out.
I'm sure Mr. Nicholas Briggs will write a part for you.
So are you very glad that you got into acting and you were able to keep working and do you plan to keep working until you finally decide you're bored with it, or?
Well, yes. I love the fact that I chose to be an actor, and it's 44 years now since I came into the business. And for roughly about 38 or 39 of those years, every Christmas we did pantomime. And of course I played the dame and I had to dress up as a woman. I'm a fat man being a woman, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And now what I find is I'm trying to get into the writing side with a few ideas I've got out there to do, but also in the great knowledge, all the people I've ever worked with, all the people that have ever written things I've been in, if they are appreciative of what I do, that's why, who knows how long the Scarifyers will last? Who knows how long Bunny before he really gets killed off? He won't be happy when he gets killed off, let me tell you. But if he gets killed off, he gets killed off. And with Robin was a thing that it was 3 years of my life that I really loved. Some great times on Robin. All right, some bad times, the weather. British weather, you're filming outside, not like the studio, the rain, the wind, the snow, whatever. But I just loved it. And I think that if I hadn't have come into acting, I think I wanted to be my first love, which I wanted to drive a train. But now I'm 66, and they put me out to pasture and retired me now, wouldn't they?
No, I think it is changing though too. I mean, you're even in America, you're seeing older actors now. Not as much as there should be, but it wasn't like the 80s or the 90s where almost everybody had to be incredibly young.
Well, I really love that because I'm 66. I'm ready for those American parts in English films to play the older man, because that would be lovely. And also the fact is that what you bring with you is the experience of being in great shows, Robin Sherwood, Scarifyers, and also the fact that those people that see you now go, how long you been in the business? 44 years. Why have I never seen you before? You've obviously been watching the wrong programs or listening to the wrong audios.
Well, I mean, the funny thing is, you know, people forget that you know, we'll be watching a movie, or we'll be watching an old show, MacGyver, as well as other things. And it is funny. Sometimes, like, character actors, which are actually the best actors because they have the most training, they don't get typecast in one part only. They
So
play many different parts. So
Well,
the funny thing is, sometimes you forget that you've seen them
yeah.
before, and you
yes,
go, "Wait a minute,
they,
yeah."
they have that longevity of life,
Yeah.
but sometimes you're watching a really old film, and you'll be a scene with a lot of characters, and you'll go dead, 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 should be dead, thinks he's dead. Where did he go? You know, and you can have a laugh, and then suddenly somebody, I mean, an old actor will appear in something that goes, my God, where's he been for 20 years? He's probably been working, jobbing actor, you know, in rep or whatever.
Yeah. So wait, just let me, so, oh dear, what was I get? Okay, go ahead.
Well, I mean, the other item that I've noticed is a lot of people now are producers, or they're working
yeah.
behind the scenes, more on set design type of things. So
Well,
some people, you've noticed, not only do they go into voice acting, like Batman movie, you know, cartoons, or Walt Disney. So if they can't get, you know, if they can't get work directly in front of the camera, they will be a voice actor, or they will work on the set or set design.
exactly. Interestingly enough, for some actors, I'm not saying all, for some actors and actresses, a good progression from being in front of the camera is to go behind the camera. And I think the main one at the moment is, of course, Jason Connery, who did the lovely Golf Story, and he's doing another film, I understand. That's a natural progression for him to go, I think, behind the camera and direct, because he has experience of film. He has experience of being in good shows like Robin Sherwood. I myself would like to go into the writing scene or the producing scene, but also it's to also give your up-and-coming actors that confidence to know, I've been there in that lonely place in the dead of night, and I know there's a way back. And whatever you do, whether it's voice, whether it's summer stock, as you do in America, whether it's repertory or television, as long as you keep going, and they will, you know, they'll pin a star on your door.
So, Phil, would you ever want to? You've played so many great heroic characters and like endearing characters. Would you enjoy playing a villain?
I have only ever played a villain twice in pantomime, and I loved it, because once again it goes against type, and people go,
That's right.
My God, he's very good as a baddie, isn't he? You know, you can be the very friendly friar, you can be the malevolent father, but if you suddenly turn out and go, my God, you know, that's the dark side of Friar Tuck, and like Darth Vader had a dark side, I could be your father, Susan, now, if I go to the dark side, can't I?
Oh my gosh.
Oh, I'd love to play a baddie.
Oh. Well, these fellas around, these three are good guys, and so I'm just I'm really glad that I got to meet you, and that we were able to do this.
It's been a pleasure.
Is there any final thoughts that anybody would like to say?
I'd like to say it's been an absolute pleasure. I'd like to thank Carol, who's here at the minute, for organising this, and to you, your lovely self, Susan, for bringing in 3 or 4 very distinguished gentlemen from all around the world, who I think have got great taste.
Well, thank you so much, and what? Just really quickly, would you have a pint for me in the honor of Nicholas at some point?
I tell you, when this finishes, Bunny Cheese, right? He's going to go down the pub. He's going to have a pint for you, for Nicholas,
Mm.
and for Bunny Cheese, right?
Mm.
And the other two distinguished gentlemen with you.
Mm.
We drink your health, and let's be doing this many years from now.
Oh wait, how about not many years from now, but how about let's do this after the new year, and we'll talk about
Well, talk about
the gnomes of death.
the Gnomes of Death. Oh, yes. Another great one written by Paul and Simon.
Yes, please. Is it a plan?
That's a plan. If you get Carol involved and just give her some dates, we'll work it out. And you must, of course, bring these distinguished gentlemen back with you, because they were semi-entertaining, you know.
I know.
I love you. I love you all, boys.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Be sure to tune in. This will be on our Facebook page, and we will share it widely in the next few hours. So thanks everybody for being here.
Susan?
Yes, Carol?
Hi there, I just want to introduce myself. Hello there. Can I just say one thing? I think we should thank Simon and Paul for the Scarifyers series.
Oh, yeah.
They do have other CDs out, which I do encourage you to listen to. And I know for a fact that Simon will be tuning into this and will be listening later.
Fantastic.
So, yeah, he will be actually looking. As far as Phil's concerned, you talk about the good and the bad side. What I would suggest you do, if you're into the bit science fiction, check out a 1975 film that he did called Threads.
Oh.
It's possibly more relevant now than it was in those days.
Oh.
It's a little bit dated, but it's a serious actor side of Phil. And if you want to talk about that, science fiction, and you know what that involves, I'm sure you'll come back to you on that one as well.
I will indeed.
But it's been lovely to meet you, and I'd like to just say hi and thank you very much.
Thank you, boys and girls.
Thank you.
Pleasure.